Thank you. First of all, I'm feeling very good to be here with you today. I'm used to look backwards, usually, during my work, but I'm trying to look forward. So I take the challenge and I try to say some words with respect to what also the audit profession is going to go through in the next years. So thank you again to be here. I'm a partner of KPMG. I'm more or less 100% of my time is dedicated to auditing financial statements of the financial institutions, more or less. And by the way, I am one of the three guys that was in the picture of Massimo that was reading his financial statements. And by the way, without being paid to do that. So it's a message of hope for Massimo. So you're not alone, okay? I will try to go through some talks that we are currently doing within KPMG, involving not just auditors, but also some experts in terms of the CSR, and also in terms of integrated reporting. I will also try to highlight what are the current position, technical position, just few words, with respect to what the International Audit and Assurance Standards Board is saying right now, but also ASSIREVI. But again, let me start a little bit with a sort of status of the corporate reporting right now. It's not working. Technology never helped the auditors. Okay, thank you. Okay, this is a research that was published at the beginning of this year, performed by KPMG at international level. In these surveys, we find that there is not just room for improvement from an overall perspective, but also from a financial statement perspective, there is still room for improvement. This survey is based on about 270 larger listed companies in the world. And the aim is try to highlight the weaknesses and identify good practices within the presentation of the corporate reporting. So, what emerged from this survey? First of all, it's quite simple. You just have to give investors the information that they need. According to most of the participants to this survey, the annual report just could look behind the past financial performance and just look forward and provide detail about strategy, progress, and implementation of the strategy. And what they should provide is more insight into the key business sources and how these have been managed, and in a view of a more long-term view. And the second step is to keep the report clear and relevant. So there are hundreds of pages, the pages highlighted also by Massimo before, that not always reflect the business priorities. There are a lot of information, and you know much better than me that when you have too much information, probably you do not have information. Third one is there is a general request to provide longer-term view using operational KPI. Normally, the information provided are really based on a short-term view, also because also in these times the boards have a short-term view, more or less, and so these are quite aligned with the timing perspective of the boards, and so the reports represent the same time horizon. There is a general request of practical KPI in order to align the strategy and the results with respect to the strategy. As fifth, we have analyzed that there is they request to provide a deeper analysis of the strategy, as I said before. This is a critical link with respect to the integrated reporting, but also other initiatives that are going on in terms of enhancing the corporate reporting. Lastly, I think that, recalling your question before, there is a general request of, okay, that's the financial performance, but what's next? What's for the future? Normally, the corporate reporting right now tend to comply with the regulators, and again, this is not always the main important thing that the stakeholders want to to hear from the corporate reporting and want to be audited or want to be assured, if not audited, by the audit firms. And I would say that this is particularly true for the financial services institutions like insurances, like banks, where there are hundreds of information, very technical, very detailed, and not always very addressed or linkable to the strategy. So, in terms of initiatives to close this information gap, there is for sure the corporate social responsibility. And again, taking my role of auditor and going back I would like to show you a little survey that we conducted this year with respect to the developments of the CSR in the world.
Climate change is a financial threat to companies around the world. Extreme weather like storms, droughts and floods can cause damage and disruption to business. And companies that don't keep up with the switch to a lower carbon world could lose competitive advantage. Yet according to a 2017 survey from KPMG, about 3/4 of large companies around the world do not yet acknowledge the financial risks of climate change in their annual reports. Of the minority that do acknowledge the risks, very few provide investors with an idea of how much is at stake. This is just one finding from KPMG's 2017 survey of corporate responsibility reporting. KPMG's survey studied reporting by almost 5,000 companies worldwide and explored the trends that will shape reporting in the future. For example, KPMG found that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals have had a big impact on business in less than 2 years since their launch. Already, 4 out of 10 company reports link the company's corporate responsibility activities to the SDGs, and that number is expected to increase rapidly in coming years. The survey also found that human rights is on the agenda as a business issue. Globally, around 3/4 of company reports identify human rights as an issue to be addressed. Companies in India, the UK and Japan are the most likely to acknowledge human rights, as are companies in the mining industry. KPMG's survey analysed both annual financial reports and corporate responsibility reports and found increasing integration between the two. A majority of the companies studied include corporate responsibility information in their annual financial reports, and this number rises among the 250 biggest companies in the world. To find out more about the latest trends in corporate responsibility reporting, download KPMG's survey from kpmg.com/CR-reporting.
Okay, so as we have seen, during the years, there has been a quite significant improvement in terms of application of the corporate social responsibility information, and now more than 3/4 of the world's largest business company now integrate the financial statements with their non-financial information data, and most of these companies suggest that this is important for their investors. Another initiative to close the gap in terms of information is the integrated reporting. You know much better than me what at Italian level, both in the financial services and in the industrial market, which are the main, or at least the first movers in this direction, and of course Generali, but also lastly Unipol produced in 2016 its first integrated report for the financial community, but also some other very important entities at Italian level, like Eni, that by the way is international, operating in the energy, but also Atlantia in the infrastructure. So it's something that is going on very quickly and very importantly in the market. So there's not just, I would say, it's not just a matter of gap of information, but probably there is also a need for assurance, because this is always requested by the market in order to maintain the correct functionalities of the market and the correctness of the information that the operators are providing to the stakeholders. So this is always confirmed also by our surveys, and by the request that the investors are presenting and are requiring, also in a context of very complex financial information provided in the financial statement. We now are seeing in the insurance market the introduction of new financial principles that relate to the IFRS 9 and IFRS 17. This will be a huge challenge for all the financial institutions for the communication of their results in the future. So, some efforts that we are doing as auditor in order to try to narrow the gap and improve our transparency in communication. There are two main topics that mainly relate to the effect of the new regulation. First of all, the large corporate have to disclose their policies in terms of non-financial information starting from this year, and we as auditor will be required to give an assurance about this information. As you know, there are items that are not particularly financially linked, so there are environmental, social, human rights, diversity, anti-corruption, and so it's a matter that is a little bit out of our comfort zone. It's something that we have to talk about. It's something that we have to add some new skills. We will see in the future what we will have to do, what we are still doing right now, but this is a first move in order to try to enhance and to develop also our relevance in terms of auditing firms with respect to the stakeholders. The second one relates, was introduced this year for the reporting of 2017. We will have to completely change our report to the financial statements. We will have to include all the so-called key audit matters. So the key audit matters relates to topics like the materiality that we use, which are the main risks from an accounting perspective that the companies are facing, how we are addressing those risks, which are the procedures that we perform, and which is the outcome. So if you look at the last report of Rolls-Royce, that was the first that was issued by KPMG several years ago, on a voluntary basis with this concept, you can see that normally the 2 pages of Massimo was 2 pages also for the audit report, but not back and front, but just 2 pages. Right now, the expectation is that our report will be more or less of 6 or 7 pages, because they have to address a lot of other topics that right now are not covered or better disclosed within our audit. So your report will be at least of 6 pages so in the future, because you write 2 pages, we write 6 pages. So I tried to summarize the current position of the main boards that relate to that issue, the standards on which we have to perform our audit or our assurance services. The first one is an international one, and the second one is the Association of Categories of all the audit firms in Italy. I wouldn't like to go in too much detail with this respect, because I would like to go a little bit highlighting what is the problem with respect to our challenge to give assurance about the topic that are included in the CSR or are included in the integrated report. So the reference standard for these activities in terms of audit is the so-called International Standard of Assurance Engagement 3000. That, by the way, is applied right now for several engagements that relates more or less to these topics: the compliance with the regulator, the compliance with contractual agreements, the compliance with, I would say, with no financial information as well, the pro forma financial information, and so on. So this standard is right now able to cover all these topics in terms of assurance to be provided to external parties, but unfortunately is not able right now to provide full assurance with respect to all the context of the integrated report. The standards, I would say, is structured in 5 steps. The first one, it's quite easy, relates to there need to be 3 parties. The first one that prepare the report, the second one that audit or assure the report, and the third one that is the stakeholders. And this one have to be 3 different parties. It's quite obvious. there has to be a subject matter, something on what we have to say it's correct or is reasonable if it's not correct. There have to be some suitable criteria. This is really the key. And then, for sure, we have to be able to obtain sufficient audit evidence, and then we have to report. We have to write a report, and this is not so easy always to be done, especially when there are so different topics to be covered within one report in a very concise way. So, but again, the game is played with respect to the suitable criteria, because this is really the key. As you have seen, the way of the integrated report is presented by Generali is completely different by the way it's presented by a small company or a small medium company in a completely different market. By the way, the integrated report of Assicurazioni Generali is not really like the integrated report of Unipol. First of all, because they have been applied in different times. So Generali starting, if I'm not wrong, in 2012, more or less, and Unipol SAI decided to implement this only in this year, so in 2016. So these reports are not so easy to be prepared, and it could be also in the same industry, have different vision and different things to be highlighted because the strategy is different. So which are the rule that we have to base, on which rule we have to base our audit? This is really the challenge. I would not try to spend more time with respect to all the criteria that relates to the suitable criteria, because it's really very technical and sometimes boring, if you want. But let's see this graph. I think that this summarizes also the path in terms of development that the corporate recording has done, and that it was highlighted also during this presentation this morning. There is a sort of evolution, there is a sort of innovation that is going forward, starting from the local GAAP or local IFRS or IFRS. Then you had some more information with the sustainability report, and then with the non-financial information, and the future for sure would be the core and more concept probably, and the integrated report. If you look at the graph, you can see that there is an increasing value in terms of providing the capacity to meet the stakeholders' need, and probably also the transparency and the consistency of the reports. On the other hand, there is an increasing amount of subjectivity in providing this information. And the subjectivity is something that is managed, or better, is used by the management, because every management has different opinion. And so assuring an opinion is not so easy to be done. So right now, this is the area that we can cover in a certain extent, because for the local and IFRS financial statements, we are able to do an audit. For the non-financial information or for the sustainability report, we can adopt the International Standard of Assurance Engagement 3000 that I recalled before. We have to do a step forward in order to increase that line of defense that right now is trying to cover our professions, but it's something that will be moved for sure in the future in some way. I do not know right now how and when, but it's something that for sure will occur, because the necessity and the need of information and assurance about information is really key also for the transparent and correct way of functioning of the markets. And so investors will be for sure inspired by your integrated report, but also to the fact that a third party, an independent third party, have to provide an assurance with respect to the statements that will be included in your report. So the challenges, as I said before, identify suitable criteria, identify the rule of the games. Even if sometimes the game seems to be similar, you can have more or less the same with respect to a football pitch or a pitch for rugby, but the rules are completely different with respect to how you can play the game with football or with rugby. And so saying I have to assure that the rules are complied with respect to rugby and football are completely different. even if the football pitch is more or less the same. We have also to involve appropriate skills. Probably we are accounting firm, we will be probably assurance firm, not just for accounting, but we have to widen our range of capabilities and range of skills. We are trying to do that also, I would say also a little bit forced by the improvement that the market is going, or at least put as a constraint in terms of introducing technology, a very advanced technology. We are trying to set up some collaborative rooms in order to have immediate analysis together with the client with respect to some issues that could emerge from the analysis of the big data. So this is a completely different way of performing our activity as auditor. So incrementing the amount of information that we have to look and we have to try to assure in a certain extent will require professions that are completely different from a pure accounting professions. So this will be the challenge. This is what we have to do. Probably we have also to participate more dynamically in the discussion with the boards, like the IIRC or the Core and More concept. We have to be a little bit more proactive with this respect. This is my personal view. It's not the view of Assidevi or any others, but it's just my personal view. Because I think that there is no way to try to maintain the line of defense, but we have to be more proactive and go a little bit out of our comfort zone and try to provide, to be a part of this journey together with you, because this could contribute to the right functioning of the market. I have the picture of the puzzle. Probably in your puzzle, Massimo, or the one that showed by Sarah, you can also, a little piece for assurance could be also something that can maintain all the pieces together because it's part of your journey. So thank you again, and